In this video, we're going to look at the most common questions that Tim Hortons asks in interviews, and I'm going to help you plan fantastic answers that will make Tim Hortons want to hire you. So let's start with a question that comes up in every single Tim Hortons interview, which is simply, what times can you work? And they are extremely interested in the answer to this question. And if you don't answer this well, you are very unlikely to get a job. This is the make or break point in the interview. So to be successful, you need to do three things. You have to show as much flexibility as you possibly can. You have to show that you are, a can-do person, that you can be there when they need someone. And when you do those two things, you are demonstrating your commitment. The way that people mess up this question spectacularly is they immediately go in by listing all of the times that they can't work. And that is a guaranteed recipe for failure. To be successful, you always talk about the times you can do, and you simply do not bring up the times that you can't do. You let them ask you specifically about those times, because the chances are they probably won't ask you about those times. If they do, however, ask you about a certain time that you would struggle to be able to work, you want to try to show as much flexibility as you possibly can. So you want to start talking about preferences and give some sort of consolation. So you can say something like, I could work the mornings on that day, or I could move this commitment to another day, and so I would be able to work that time. So you want to show as much flexibility as you possibly can. The other things you need to do to be successful in this is to show their priorities. So Tim Hortons' priorities are people that are reliable and available, that you can work at short notice. The evenings, so that's towards the very end of the store opening time, slightly more difficult to get staffing. Right when the store opens, right at the very beginning of the day, can be a rush period for the company. So when people are first going to work, that's when there is high demand for coffee, for example. So if you can work right at store opening, that's great. If you're happy to work weekends, which a lot of people would prefer not to work weekends, but if that doesn't bother you, definitely mention that. That's a great selling point. And if you do have the possibility that you could work school holidays, then that's a great thing to bring up. If you can't work the school holidays, simply don't bring it up. So to be successful, tell them all about the times you can do and don't mention what you can't do. Show your can-do attitude and you'll be successful in this question. The second question is, what can you tell me about Tim Hortons? And there is absolutely no point ever going for a job interview without doing lots of preparation. So to be successful on this question, or in the interview more generally when you're showing off your knowledge, you have to think about it in terms of that diagram. So a rubbish answer has things that everyone knows, and then as you move out in that circle, your answer gets better. So you got some things that only some people know, and then some things that only very few people know. So you can talk about how the store's got a rush in the morning, so that the big peak time for the store is when they do close to 60% of their sales really in the mornings. You can talk about their roll up the rim to win competition. The company is beverage and coffee led, so that means the majority of their sales and income come from drinks rather than selling, for example, donuts. They are Canadian based. They are huge in Canada, as you probably know. You can talk about their Camp Day, where they raise an absolute fortune for charity. Just say things like they were founded in 1964. Just simply having that number shows to them that you've done your research. And then you can move up one level and talk about them being part of Restaurant Brands International, which stems from their acquisition of when Burger King took them over. And the other thing that you definitely need to be aware of is that some stores are corporate owned and some stores are franchised. So a franchise store is different to a corporate store, and you need to prepare slightly differently. So a franchise could be owned by a small business owner, whereas the corporate ones are part of Tim Hortons themselves and Restaurant Brands. So the top tip for being super successful is to just take a little time and read Restaurant Brands International Form 10K, and you'll find information about Tim Hortons in there. There'll be Burger King information as well, but focus on the Tim Hortons stuff. And if you've read that, you will have more information than you could possibly imagine. And if you just mention anything in there, you're going to really impress them. So let's go on and look at the next question. So how would you handle a rude and abusive customer? And unfortunately, this can happen at Tim Hortons. And if you look it up and read their Wikipedia page, there was a somewhat infamous incident where they refused to let someone use the bathroom. So the way that you're successful on this question is you immediately start by saying that you're going to stay calm. So you must stay calm. You must never argue back. You must never raise your voice. They are the wrong things to do because it escalates the situation. You're then going to mention that you're going to stick to Tim Hortons policies. So you're going to be aware of what the company's policies are, and you're going to stick to that. Just because someone is angry and upset doesn't mean that they get lots of free stuff, for example. And then the most important thing to get in your answer is to say that you're going to use de-escalation techniques. And the word de-escalation, the second that appears in the answer, the interviewer knows what you're talking about and you're going to do the right thing. So it's a question where they're looking to be reassured that you're going to behave appropriately. So de-escalation techniques are things like talking quietly, talking softly, not raising your voice, trying to find a solution, and actively listening to what the person's saying. Often when customers are rude and abusive and just angry, they're often just trying to get your attention and make you listen to what they have to say. So listening is a really powerful de-escalation technique. So get these 3 ideas about staying calm, following the policies, and using de-escalation. Get those in and you will pass this question. Let's go into question 4. They are interested to know your strengths and weaknesses. And for your strengths, you want to have a substantial strength. So something that is really important. You want to have some strong evidence. So think of something to back up your strength. And then the most important thing for a strength is that it has to be extremely relevant to Tim Hortons business. This is your opportunity to sell yourself and say, I can do something that is really useful to you. And the way that you can structure your answer is to say something like, a major strength I've developed is, if you're struggling to think of one, a good one to talk about is reliability, or customer service is a really good one to always go to. So some evidence of the strength. So you could have a reference from a former manager, or you could bring along a qualification that you have. And then you want to really sell yourself by finishing by saying, I believe this strength will be exceptionally useful to Tim Hortons because, and spell out to them, why does this matter? So if you're talking about reliability, it's very important to have people at the store on time so customers get the best experience and the store is fully staffed and running smoothly. Something like that. Just make it clear why your strength is important to them. The other one is when they ask about your weakness. And this can cause you to fail the whole interview. If you pick the wrong weakness, it's a real disaster. So you want to start by giving a genuine weakness. So something like, it's so hard being a total perfectionist. That's just rubbish. That is not a weakness, and it shows you're not reflective, and it's just dodging the question. The second thing you have to do is show that you're doing something to fix it. You're going to be working with your manager. You're going on a training course. You've reflected on it and you're going to implement something to do it differently. But the single most important thing about picking your weakness is it has to be something that Tim Hortons just really doesn't care about. So if you were to say something like, managers complain about my bad attitude, you're going to lose the whole interview. So you want it to be something fairly trivial. For example, you could talk about spelling if you're in a role that doesn't actually involve any writing. That would be absolutely fine. So something that is a weakness, but really makes no difference at all to your job. And if you do that, you'll get through that question, no problem. So let's look at how you structure your answer. So you say, one weakness I'm aware of is, I've been working on this by, and you just get that simple structure and you will succeed on this question. So question 5 is a dangerous question. You've got to be careful with this one. Why did you quit your last job? And a lot of people screw this up spectacularly. So there's certain things that they like and they're really happy to hear. You know, if you're going for a promotion, you're going from working in the store to an assistant manager, store manager, that is a perfectly reasonable reason to move employment. Relocating, so say for example, your partner's got a new job somewhere else and you're moving to that new area, that's kind of outside of the corporate world, that it's not affected by something that happened at your employer, and it's a perfectly reasonable reason to be moving. Talk about all the positives about why you want to work for Tim Hortons. You can turn it around and say that I'm really interested in working here. Corporate restructuring, so that's where the store that you used to work at closed, or they were downsizing and there was nothing to do with your performance, but just everybody had to go. And a great thing to mention is if your former employer would give you a job straight away back, and you've left that employer in a way that you could come back and you've got a good reference, definitely bring that up. Certain things that you must absolutely avoid talking about. So if you say anything negative at all about your former employer, that is absolutely wrong. Do not ever do that in an interview. Do not ever say anything negative about your previous manager, because they will assume that it's probably the manager that was right and you that are wrong, and you're just moaning and they want to get rid of you and they don't want you in their organization. Any conflict with former employees, don't mention falling out with people, because they will assume that you're the problem even if you weren't. That's the immediate reaction. When people are interviewing people, the thing they're really looking for is, will you fit in well with their team? And they don't want to bring in anyone who's been involved in any conflict, even if it wasn't their fault, because it could damage the team and cause a lot of problems. So the final one that I'm going to give you as a bonus is the one around the questions to ask. You must have questions prepared. So memorize a couple of these and you will be more likely to get the job. If you have no questions, it is a total disaster. So you can ask about the next steps in the hiring process, ask them about what their favorite thing is and react really positively to their answers and sound really interested. You can ask them for advice about how to start really successfully and how to prepare for the job. A great cheeky question to ask, which is quite clever actually, is to ask them what an ideal Tim Hortons employee looks like, because that is your opportunity to remind them at the end of the interview that actually you meet all of the criteria for the ideal employee. And the last thing you have to always make sure you do is ask one question based on something that's come up in the interviews. That shows that you're listening and paying attention and that you're engaging in a two-way conversation. So hopefully this video has been very helpful to you, and best of luck in your Tim Hortons interview. Thank you very much for watching.